Welcome, another episode of the Left Mike, Right Mike Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Left Mike. Follow along at Twitter at Debate Left Mike, and we've got Right Mike over there.
Yeah, you can take a wild guess. Twitter.
It could be anything.
Figure it out.
It could even be at Debate Right Mike.
Conservatives are smart enough to figure that out, so I don't think I need to tell them.
Cute.
That was a low blow for no reason.
Low,
just
low
regret
shots.
that decision.
Low-hanging fruit. And guys, obviously, if you've not already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button on the YouTubes
or the podcasts.
Or podcasts. We should just about be everywhere right now. So on all major platforms, and of course online, leftmike.rightmike.com. And that brings us to today's episode. Are you excited? I know this is one that we one of the few topics you and I have gotten kind of like personally at each other's throats.
That's always your deal. I don't get upset. Well,
that's true because you lack morals. But we'll be covering
character attacks. Strong argument.
Thanks.
Already started with the character attacks. Don't even know what we're talking about today.
Ad hominem. Step 1. Delegitimize your opponent. The liberals' guide to arguing. Immigration. We're going to be doing immigration today. Obviously, it's one of the more pressing issues in the United States right now. Good old boy Donnie is not making it any easier for anyone, including, I think, conservatives, other than for the people that love to hate brown people, in which case he's doing a great job. And we're going to give you
when
thoughts.
People bring up that that you think conservatives hate brown people, it's no one is complaining about the nice Indian family that moved in across the street. So that's just, again, it's like a character attack. Oh, it's because you're racist. It's like, no, it's not. Not that I'm denying that there aren't racist people out there.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people complain about the Indian family that moves in.
I don't think so at all.
That's a lot. I think that's because you don't.
I like Indian families.
Pay attention. Curry's very good though.
I like Thai curry better though.
Yeah, well.
No, but I like Indian food too.
Why don't
American food?
Why don't you move there if you like it so much better there?
Thailand? That'd be super. I'd be rich in Thailand.
It's true.
Yeah, I might do it. I don't know.
So
I love
immigration
America too much. It's worth the price to live here.
Of shitty pizza and not good curry.
Freedom. It's the only place in the world, pretty much.
There it is. Is it though? So.
Yeah.
Before we belittle each other into submission, we'll get on with it. So, and on behalf of both of us, immigration is probably, along with trade, one of the most complex issues that you deal with in terms of foreign policy. Okay, good. Never mind. On behalf of me, I think immigration is one of the more complex things you deal with, especially in a nation that has so much in the way of resources and means and arbitrarily chooses not to use those largely based on the color of your skin and what country you're coming from. So I think
it's about color.
It's I mean, if the shoe fits, if the evidence points that way, right? Just because it doesn't say no brown people in the law doesn't mean that's not who it's pointed at.
Yeah. So how many H-1B visa holders do we have from India? We need their skills, so we give them work visas to come here legally. I don't see the issue. So really, we're not talking about immigration today. We're really talking about illegal immigration. For me, if you want to try to think of it in this utopian world in which all countries have perfect information and freedom and everything else, then the best immigration policy would be a very lax immigration policy. But to not directly quote, but to paraphrase one of the greats, the intellectual and economic greats, Milton Friedman, you can't have both a welfare state and open borders. So I think we have to choose between a welfare state and open borders.
But you want to eliminate both, so that's disingenuous.
No, I don't. My main opposition to a more lax immigration policy is purely based on our social safety net programs. If by virtue of being on American soil you are granted things that other people have to pay for, then no, I don't think we should have open borders. And I do believe that as a sovereign nation, we have a right to decide who comes into our country. Why don't you believe that?
I wasn't aware that I did believe that. I wasn't aware that I've ever advocated for completely open borders. See, I'm learning new things about even myself. That's how smart conservatives are. They can have knowledge about me that even I don't know.
Well, you've argued with me being in favor of granting illegal immigrants sovereignty, or amnesty. I don't think we should be handing away U.S. citizenship to people that broke our laws. You don't get rewarded for coming here and breaking the law.
Okay, what if you come here legally? You get to the border station. You say, I am being pursued by a drug cartel. They've already killed a member of my family. Here's documents that some of them have. And that border agent says, yeah, sorry, try again tomorrow. And then you're left with going back towards the drug cartel or crossing
We don't have
illegally.
we don't have an obligation to accept refugees or asylum seekers. I do
I,
not
I
believe that.
think
I do not believe that even a little bit.
I think an international law says you're absolutely wrong. That if there is a genuine claim of asylum, that we have a duty to accept them.
False. We are the greatest superpower on the planet. If someone tries to tell us that we have to do something, for the most part, unless it's in our
So
best interest, we can tell
we're
them to
not
shove
going to
it.
take your desperate people because we have more nukes. That's your stance. That's brave.
Because we have more nukes. I'm not really worried about Mexico nuking us. And that's where the
That's
plurality of illegal immigrants come from, is Mexico.
that's
Pouring
that's
across the
actually
border.
that's not true. It's actually Central America. It's more limited in Mexico. But if you want to keep speaking in fallacies, I'd love to keep tearing you apart.
Okay. But yeah, you're doing a great job so far.
I think
I'd like to see. I'd love to see the stats though that it's not a plurality of immigrants coming from Mexico, because that's news to me.
asylum
It's
seekers.
really hard.
Asylum
I
seekers.
said
Most
illegal
asylum-
immigrants.
You said we have no obligation to take people who are asylum seekers, and you're like, yeah, most of them are from Mexico anyways. Should we take those people?
No, I mean it
No,
it
just
depends on the
uniformly no.
circumstances. If you do that, anybody can show up at the border and say whatever they want to say. There was
Mm-hmm.
already. I was watching an interview with the head of ICE talking about this exact same problem. How everyone's just beating Trump down on
It's a really
immigration right now.
noble organization, ICE. I'm sure this guy's trustworthy, but go ahead.
Well, I actually have a family member in ICE. Funny enough, but
I'm sorry for your loss.
what is that supposed to mean? They're gonna die in ICE?
No, just that you lost a family member to shit morality. It's sad.
I don't think that working for ICE means you have bad morality.
We were fine with ICE for most of our country's history, and then they popped up in what 2004. Why? What
You,
need
you mean fine without ICE?
without
I don't
ICE?
know what I don't know what year ICE started in.
It was after 2000. Thanks, Bill Clinton. So, I think that they are just
I
a.
don't see if it was after 2000 how that would have anything to do with Bill Clinton. We elected Bush in 2000. We elected Bush
Rewind.
in. And I also don't like how all of a sudden Trump's being demonized. And I know you can bring up that it's being enforced more or whatever. Trump is part of the executive branch, okay? He's not creating laws. He's not the legislative branch making new laws about immigration. These are existing laws that are already on the books that are being enforced.
No, but so if I could be well in support of my local police agency pulling, speeders over and ticketing them. And then when they change their enforcement to putting a little invisible metal pole that clocks all of our speeds where it can't be seen and pulling every speeder over and fining all of them, I can be against the enforcement of that, and that's rational, logical, and acceptable.
I think it's
So
a fairly
just because-
poor analogy to make it sound extreme. I think a better analogy would be, if I've been speeding on this road my whole life and no one's ever stopped me for speeding before,
that's
I don't think
absolutely
they should
not
be.
the
I think
same.
I should fight the enforcement
My-
of it. They shouldn't
no.
pull me over because they never did before.
This isn't happening to me, so no, that's a terrible example. My point is that it's absolutely fair to have a law that was enforced one way and us more or less be willing to accept it, and then in a flash, and purely punitively, as Jeff Sessions admitted, that we're going to punish families and tear them apart
Tearing families apart.
to discourage those crossing, even those seeking asylum. I think it's immoral. I think it's
And I'm
it's
trying to
disgusting.
remember when the law was passed that changed basically the policy that is
No,
leading
I'm not.
to families
That,
being
that,
separated.
that's
Which
what I'm
president?
saying.
Which administration was that?
That's what I'm Clinton. But Clinton did not enforce it that way. Bush did not enforce it that way, and Obama did not enforce it that way. So I'm allowed to be upset that Trump and Sessions have made the decision to enforce it differently. That is absolutely something that I can do. And
I was really trying to get at Obama when you compare the Obama administration, who also had. It's not like they didn't enforce the law, by the way. The Obama administration did. A lot of the pictures that it's come out already that a lot of the pictures being used were actually pictures taken back in 2014 under Obama.
that's true.
And then they're now blaming Trump, like, oh, they're tearing these families apart. It's like, no, that was actually something happening back in 2014 under Obama. People were complaining then.
right, because under Obama,
We're enforcing the law. Are they enforcing it more now? Yeah, but they were
Yes.
enforcing the law back then, so it's not like they weren't enforcing the law and now they're enforcing the law and that's what you're taking issue with. But in
no,
either
but
case, you should be taking issue with the law then, right?
no, quantity matters, right? So Obama would not file criminal charges against nonviolent first-time crossers. He wouldn't hold them to be convicted. He would process them and not separate them with their families and send them back. Trump says no. We're gonna prosecute every single person that crosses, regardless of whether or not with their family. That meant that whereas Obama, I think they separated somewhere between 8 and 11,000 families over the course of 8 years, whereas Trump did the same thing to like 2 or 3,000 families in about 7 weeks. So I think that the liberal outrage is absolutely justified. When you change the enforcement that drastically, we're absolutely going to be upset, and rightly so. And sure, the goal is have a better law. And I think now we desperately need it that Trump has signed an executive order, not that he won't separate families for nonviolent first-time offenders, but that he can now hold the entire family without due process indefinitely if he sees fit. He said he's made tweets about how it's a dumb law, and the dumb law he's talking about is due process in the U.S. Constitution. He's fine with depriving these people of their constitutional rights, which still
Their constitutional rights.
Yes, which still apply to non-citizens, and there's precedent for that. That they're
Yeah,
on our
I
soil.
don't fully agree with. They're on our soil because they came here illegally.
Right, but they still are, and thus they still have the right to due process. And Trump is fine with ignoring that because Trump only likes the Constitution when it suits him. You cannot be held indefinitely without just cause.
They're not holding people indefinitely, though. When are they holding people indefinitely?
The executive order ended that 20-day window, right?
They can't get them trials in that time. That's the issue. You can't get them to trial in that time. So
right,
what are you going to do? Release them? Are you going to release the illegal immigrant?
Absolutely.
And then they don't show up for the trial, and now they're just at large, and then you can give them asylum later?
You can, if you want to deport them, deport them. That's fine, right? That's when you can say, let's argue the law. That's a great point, right? You catch someone crossing, they're a first-time offender, you've not seen them before, they're with their family, you go, hey, you can't do this. All right, we're gonna take your name, your fingerprints. We're gonna know who you are. Don't do this again, or we're gonna take this further. And the next day you send them home. Great debate to have.
A lot of these people are claiming asylum. You know that, right? Now that's the issue now. So if you tell somebody the right thing to say, oh, show up at the U.S. border and just say you're an asylum seeker to prevent them from deporting you.
A lot of asylum seekers are required to have documents, and some of them do, and they still get turned away. So number one. Number two, asylum or illegal immigrants. And as a small government guy, I'm shocked that you support this. The cost of detaining people that are of no threat to the United States instead of just deporting them is mind-boggling to me. Why? What's the point? It's punitive.
Well, you said something that I don't think most liberals would say. It's something that I would agree with. If you're not for open borders, which is the main liberal argument, is like, yeah, we'll let as many as they want come in.
That's not true, but
I've heard that argument made many times.
Okay,
but since you're not, I'm glad you're not making that argument. But if you want to photograph and fingerprint everybody that we catch illegally crossing the border and say congratulations, you can now never become an American citizen. You can never immigrate to this country.
I didn't say that.
No, I didn't say that. No, I said that. That's what I'm saying. I think that would be a very fair solution, because that's going to really discourage people from trying to cross the country.
Let me ask you then.
Illegally.
Let me ask you then. When you have
maybe a 10-year ban, 5-year ban, who knows?
So let me ask you then. When you have someone that's nonviolent, no drugs, crossing for the first time, with or without their family, to me that's almost secondary. Do you support detaining them for 35 days at the cost of the American taxpayer so that we can formally get a charge on their record?
I think we should put in place an expedited process by which you have, if you're caught here illegally, you get banned for, maybe we'll call it a period of time. I'm not going to jump to lifetime.
I'm not talking about the ban. I'm saying, do you support
I don't want to waste a bunch of money
detaining people in our jails, no matter how shanty they are, at the cost of the American taxpayer just for the act of crossing a border?
Yeah. Well,
do you support that?
Yeah, as opposed to letting them go free?
No, you capture them. You capture them and then deport them a day later.
Capture them.
Is that the right word? Arrest them?
I feel like capture is the wrong word to use there.
I apologize if I offended anyone.
So what
that's been
would
captured or
the
captured.
expedient process? Because again, this is not something that
All you have to do
we're
is
not looking
is
to make each other look stupid or something. We're trying to agree on things.
Never mind the ban, right? Never mind this. So you can't become a citizen ever in 10 years.
Then what is then
no,
if you're just going to send it back?
Stop.
What's
We'll
the point?
argue that. We'll argue that later. If you're a first-time offender, you get fingerprinted, so we can ID you the next time. We immediately send you back, so you're here for less than 24 hours. If you cross again, then it's a conversation. Should we detain them? What penalties should we inflict upon them so they learn their lesson and don't do this a third time? But to penalize first-time non-violent crossers is just dumb. It's a waste of tax money. It's immoral. It serves no purpose, right?
Yeah, it does to discourage people from crossing the border illegally.
Does it?
Yeah, if your policy is catch and release on, or catch and deport without any punishment on for a first-time offender, well, then you know that here's my one shot to get into the U.S. and hide and make it to a sanctuary city.
They're willing to.
Worst case scenario is I'm just going to get sent back to Mexico. There's no consequences.
Crossing the border is a life and death decision, right? They're willing to risk death to cross the border. But
how are they dying to cross the border? You think Border Patrol is just gunning people down?
No, they die in the heat from the crossing, from nutrition, from
then they should have saved up and hired better coyotes to smuggle them, I guess.
It doesn't matter how they die. The fact is that when you cross the border, you're putting your life on the line. So how is getting a bed, three meals a day?
I don't think the mortality rate of crossing the border is that high.
It's higher.
I'd be interested to know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Okay, well let me ask this.
I don't know if it's higher than not crossing the border. Mexico's a pretty dangerous place.
So if you're willing to put your life on the line,
that's what I'm saying. I don't think you're putting your life on the line. Like I think you're an economic migrant trying to come here for a job to send money back to Mexico.
How is spending your days getting free food and a free shelter a deterrent to the truly desperate people? It's not.
Getting locked up in a cell. Most people coming from Mexico, by the way, are not. They're starving in Mexico and they're just trying to get food and shelter. These people, by and large, are coming here to work. They're coming here to send money back to Mexico to help their families. It's not like they're bad people or evil people, by and large.
Good. We agree on that.
Right. So I'm not trying to demonize all illegal immigrants, but when you set up a system that doesn't punish them, I think that getting put in jail is a punishment, by the way. I don't think that is a benefit. They're like, oh, well, I'm just going to get free food. Prison food is terrible, and then can we can't work and send money back to their family, which is the whole point of coming.
Really bad.
Oh yeah.
I don't think.
Can we broach that?
Yeah, no. VIP.
What's prison food like?
If you subscribe to the Patreon account, we'll tell you about Mike's prison experience, jail experience. If you admit that they're not bad people, then why are you not only willing to punish them for a misdemeanor, but also punish their innocent children who have done nothing wrong? Now they're being held with them, these first-time crossers, while Trump and his administration got their thumbs up their ass, clogging up the judicial system, clogging up the jails, and Sessions and
making it sound like Trump is trying to prevent the judicial system from doing its job. I don't think that at all.
He's overwhelming.
I think that Trump has clearly empowered the government employees to actually do their job and enforce our existing laws. And if you take issue with the law, then lobby to get the law changed. Don't act like Trump's evil for it.
What's the net migration from Mexico in the past 8-9 years? Do you have any idea?
I do. Well, number one, no, and number two, I don't trust the immigration numbers by and large.
Right, because it's government, right?
No, it's self-reported. Where I'm going to ask somebody, "Are you illegal?" That's what they're usually relying on census data. All the numbers that people, when they talk about 10 million immigrants or whatever, amnesty for all 10 million, they're talking about like census data.
So not true. So we have a variety of different ways to measure number of illegal immigrants here. I don't think we've had a census here since 2000. What is it? Every 8 years since 2012,
That's
right?
One of the problems is that they're using old census data that relies on basically self-reported.
Horseshit. Net migration you can measure in a variety of different ways. One of those is arrest. One of those
all
is
those border cameras. I mean, if you don't possibly know how many people are coming across the border. There's no wall yet.
You build a 20-foot wall, and then there's a Mexican guy selling 25-foot ladders. But no, my point is that the net migration in Mexico is estimated to be near zero year after year for the past few years. Not only is illegal immigration not really a problem, it's almost not happening. It's such a small percentage that all the effort and argument that you put in is just thinly veiled xenophobia and to create like a
Another
white
leftist
ethno state.
buzzword. No, again, the argument, you have to try to transform the argument into a moral thing, and you do that all the time. Is, oh, you are
That's because
against.
one of us has morality.
See,
Sorry.
that's your argument. Your argument is that I'm immoral because I don't think that we should let anyone that wants to come here, and that we should actually enforce our immigration laws and have borders. What's the point of having borders if we're not going to enforce the borders?
So again, I'm not for open immigration, so therefore I'm fine with borders. So you take
What happens
every
to
time I
immigration
take,
if you take a soft stance on it? Oh, there's no punishment. What happens?
I
Does it
didn't
go
say
up or
there's
does it go down?
I didn't say there's no
Yeah,
punishment.
you
The
just said
first
catch
time,
and deport the first time.
right? The second time you don't,
So
right? And
the second
and
you get a freebie. You get a free chance to try and come here illegally. Congratulations, that's your
you get a
immigration
free,
policy.
you get a free chance to cross one of the most treacherous terrains on Earth. Maybe make it. Hopefully, you don't die stuffed in a train car because that happens. And if you somehow do that,
You're making
you
it
get
sound
caught.
like 90% of immigrants like die crossing the border. We're not talking about the Holocaust trains here. You're talking.
No, these are probably worse.
I'd be. Oh wow.
Much hotter.
Wow.
The train is worse. I'm not saying what happened.
I stand with the Jews. The problem here, you're taking issue with enforcement, and you think that we should have basically more lax enforcement and give you a free pass the first time. How is that going to help the immigration problem in the U.S.? And I guess part of the answer to that is you don't think there is an immigration problem.
Yeah, I don't think it would necessarily make a large enough issue that I'm all that concerned about it. I think anyone that's already willing to cross the border is going to look at spending 20 days in jail and go, yeah, not a deterrent. If you're willing to leave everything and put it all on the line, getting caught and being locked up for 20 days is a slap on the wrist. Take it from a guy who's done 10, right? It's not that bad.
Didn't you say it was like the worst 10 days of your life?
Yeah, but that's because I had like things to live for. These people come with nothing, right?
No, they're usually coming to send money back to a family to help support their family.
How evil of them.
I already said they're not evil for that.
How reprehensible.
But you just said they don't have anything to live for.
Well, nothing like the spending the 10 days in jail or 20 days in jail is not a deterrent. The idea that that's going to deter people from crossing the border is absolutely ridiculous on almost any level that I can think of. I can't comprehend someone that's like, I'm jobless, my family needs money, I don't know what to do, that's a really long walk, and it's July, but I'm just going to, pay some guy at 90% of the money I have in the hopes that maybe he gets me across the border. Maybe I don't get caught and I can start a semblance of a better life. I don't see how it's like, yeah, but you might go to jail for 20 days. It's going to be like, oh, well, no, 20 days. Come on now. I can't risk that. I got.
No, I already say what I think would be an effective deterrent. I think that we have a policy that says, I'm going to call it a minimum of 5 years. You get caught crossing the border once, that is a 5-year ban on applying for U.S. citizenship or asylum or anything.
I would be more apt to support. I would be more apt to support that than I would detaining literally everyone at taxpayer expense.
That's
my problem.
Something I completely agree with being small government. I don't want to waste my money on that either.
What about, number one, simplifying the legal system so people that don't have $25,000 for an immigration lawyer can reasonably apply, and if they can show that they can be a valuable contributing member of society, that they're permitted to come here. Number one. Number two, credible asylum seekers should always be let in. There's just not enough of them for them not to be. What's the Statue of Liberty? What does it say on hers? Like,
oh wait, so the Statue of Liberty, that was in the Constitution, right? That's where that quote came from.
That's well done. So we can't do anything that's not explicitly spelled out in the Constitution. Is that your stance? If you're taking
no, but if you're saying that the justification for us needing to take, being forced to take in quote unquote asylum seekers is the Statue of Liberty, I think that's pretty silly.
That we're the city of lights on the hill, right? We're a place of great glory and where there's liberty and freedom for all, and that if you are in your desperate hour, that we will accept you, right? Not to mention that most asylum seekers in the United States are coming here because of the U.S.'s failed imperialism in Central America and or the power of the drug cartels, which is almost uniquely funded by the U.S.'s drug laws. So in effect, asylum seekers are by and large escaping American policies. So yeah, you can roll your eyes all you want, but the truth is,
Our drug laws are the reason that these third world countries are shitholes. It's because of our drug laws.
the power of the drug cartels is directly tied to the
It's our
amount of
fault. The
money.
drug cartels, it's our fault.
In part, absolutely. They get their power from the money that flows out of the United States
So
in the way
we
of
should
drugs.
have to we should have to make heroin legal in order to eliminate the drug cartels. Otherwise, it's our fault. Like,
Well,
it's
hey,
just, I feel like it's weak. Real weak.
I feel like that's the most slippery slope that's ever done slipped.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that argument. I think that's a really poor argument. Because then what's the solution?
Heroin.
What's the solution? Make heroin legal. Like, where else can you go with that? We'd have to decriminalize heroin.
I think
And
decriminalizing
cocaine.
possession of everything would be fine. I think decriminalizing possession is a great idea, but that's another
Dangerous.
episode. My point is this: that it is American policies that have destabilized a lot of these places. So while I don't think it should matter whether or not it's our fault in any way that these people are as desperate as they are, the fact that it's like a little bit is our fault just speaks to the fact that if it's a genuine claim for asylum or refuge, we're the greatest nation in the world. We shouldn't be saying no to that.
There are cases I think you could make for asylum seekers, and it would still depend on the asylum seeker, not just because they're seeking asylum, therefore yes. I think it would still depend on the individual person. If we're going to, I can't say let's import some culture en masse that's going to possibly destroy our country, as is happening in Europe right now.
You know that's
It's happening in Europe right now.
It's just getting destroyed. German crime rate's just off the charts. The economy's collapsing.
Oh yeah, rape's not like going through the roof in several of the Europe, like Sweden, Malmo, Sweden. I mean, rape capital.
You have
Europe now.
pockets. Yeah, you have pockets of
filled
very,
with asylum-seeking
crime.
immigrants who are really economic migrants.
So-
what is the solution that if you were to propose a solution to immigration? I've already told you mine. I think that we should ban people from ever applying
Coming
for
to
U.S.
America.
I'd say maybe the first time it's a 5-year, and maybe the second time it's a lifetime.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that would be a strong deterrent.
I think it's a really sweet thing to do to people that simply want a better life. What gives you the right, simply by being born inside of imaginary lines, to all the things that you get as an American, and then to completely deny all of those things to someone else? Right? I agree.
See,
that
I'm
a
here
little bit
legally.
of
First off,
nationalism, that's a made up thing.
no, it's
right?
not.
Oh, are you not?
You don't believe? You don't believe in the abstraction of a state or something? Is that what you're going to argue?
I'm saying that the Native Americans are going to claim that your legality in this country is at least a little bit in question, and they're right.
That's
The idea that
no, they're not.
that you're here legally because
That's
you
how-
came over, stole the land, created the laws that said you're here legally. Cool claim, dude.
Founded the country. It wasn't. It was America. This is land. Yeah, it was land, and it was taken
And a-
from
and
Native
a-
Americans. But guess
and a
what?
lot of
That's
it-
how pretty much every land that exists today. That's how it exists. That's how countries exist.
And a lot of it was also
There was
Mexican.
land.
And
You
then we had the
can't
Mexican-American
trace back.
War. We moved the border after winning the
Just like-
Mexican-American War.
What are you going to do? Go to every land and try to trace back whoever was the
No,
first person on that land, and then all other people are banished.
No, absolutely not. I'm saying
So-
that the general rule of thumb should be freedom of movement, right? That unless you're a threat, unless you're a detriment to the society that you're coming into, I think that the default position should be, okay, let's do it right. Let's do it within the rules that we've established, but you should be allowed to. The default position should be like, well, you're on the wrong side of the land for this particular year, so you can fuck off. I think it's just a.
I mean, your argument that we don't have a right to be here. I really didn't think that you're going to go with the Native American argument.
I'm not saying that we don't have a right to be here. I'm saying that it's completely arrogant to tell someone else that they don't have a right to be here, right? We have a right to be here.
So you don't believe that
we have
you don't believe that we have the right to build a country, to create a sovereign nation. You don't believe
No,
that we have that right.
No, I absolutely do. We have that
Okay,
right.
but then we don't have the right to decide who's allowed in that sovereign nation that we built.
I don't think we should be doing it to the level that we are. I think it should be fair and firm, right? And I don't think right now that it's fair at all. I think that if you have genuinely good people trying
But
to
you're
seek a
arguing
better
for
life,
you're arguing for which is it? Are you arguing for freedom of movement, or are you arguing for
I will
fair and
almost-
firm border enforcement?
I will
Which one?
I will almost never argue anything. Absolutely, I think it's a blend of the two, right? So I believe in borders. I don't think that we should just have people walking across due to the fact that, and the only reason that I believe that is that I want a strong social welfare state, and you cannot have open borders and a strong social welfare state.
Thank
that
you
is absolutely
for
true.
At least agreeing to that economic certainty.
Absolutely. I don't, and that's why I need to have borders in my perfect view of the world. But I think that if you're a contributing citizen, I think that if you mean well, that you should be able to come here with very little restrictions. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that U.S. taxpayer dollars are going to housing tent city families for misdemeanor nonviolent crimes when we could just turn them away. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that punishing good people, no matter what it is, oh, well, it's the law. That's a dumb argument. It's weak. We're allowed to.
I think it's a dumb argument. I think that we're allowed to enforce our border laws. I'm with you on wanting to find a cheaper way to do it that doesn't put people in the system for months on end and waste a bunch of my money. I mean,
yeah. So
I'm not for that.
But I
think a good solution to that would be.
Yeah, go ahead.
A big, beautiful wall.
Okay, so let's talk about the wall.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
big, beautiful wall. So you don't have to worry about all these people walking across the border because it's a lot harder to walk across the border with a 20-foot wall in front of you.
Yeah, but it only goes 5 feet underground, so easier to go one way or the other.
So so is the argument, because that's the only argument I hear against the wall, is that it won't work, and then I have to wonder, okay, so if you're so sure it won't work, why are you so against it?
Because it's $70 billion that we could be spending on free college.
Of somebody else's money anyway. I mean, what is your argument?
It's not someone else's money. It's the U.S. taxpayer. Why are you?
Well, someone else's money? Because I pay a heck of a lot of money in taxes, so it's.
So you should get more of a vote than me.
No, I'm
sure what the founding fathers would have wanted.
I'm just poking at the idea that it's always people. You're really concerned about spending someone else's money, in this case, but it's always the liberals that are so anxious to spend someone else's money on everything else.
Yeah, right. Because priorities, right? How do illegal immigrants get here, Mike?
A plurality of illegal immigrants come from Mexico.
No. How do they get here? You say a border wall.
By crossing the border illegally.
Okay. And you think a border wall will fix that?
There was a town in Texas, and there was it was like a Washington Post article or something about a border wall in Texas that it reduced border crossings by like 89%.
Right, of course, because there's a wall there, so it's hard to get.
It's harder to cross. The idea that the wall's not going to work. Oh, I'm just going to tunnel or just build a taller ladder or whatever. Yeah, go get a 25-foot ladder and try to climb over the brand new U.S. border wall. That's going to work great, and everybody's going to do that. It's not going to have any impact on illegal immigration. Okay. So then the only argument against it is the money.
So
if it's paying for it, let's find a way to pay for it.
Let's not, right? Because it's completely ineffective. So would it be a shock to you if I said, as an absolute fact, that a plurality of people in the United States that are here illegally did not cross the border in an illegal fashion?
I guess it depends on what data you're looking at. Again, the data on how many illegals are here right now is super skewed. And I know that you're going to hate this person to bring it up because she's so far right. But Ann Coulter, if you actually read her book, Adios America, if you actually read, Ann Coulter is a super intelligent.
40% of people here illegally came by air. The vast majority of the ones that didn't.
You're not listening.
That came by land. The vast majority that are here illegally came by land legally. The overwhelming majority of illegal immigrants in this country came on legal visas which expired, which your wall will fix nothing. That will do not a damn thing. So it is an absolute fact to say that the vast majority of illegal immigrants in the United States in 2018 would have never even been affected by the wall.
So not that there's a way to show the statistics either way. That's why I said Adios America. And Coulter pretty brilliantly outlines why there's probably upwards of 30 million illegal immigrants here, most of whom are from Mexico. So if you're looking at 10 million instead of 30 million or more, it's a very different pool of people then, right? Because then you have documentation. It's a lot easier to document someone that's overstayed a visa than it is to document how many people are walking across the border.
I can't and won't debate fringe sources and pseudo facts.
Oh, that's not
that I nor you have been able to provide sources to verify. So I don't give a single flying about Ann Coulter or this idea that she had in a book to sell copies based on manufactured outrage. But
It's not manufactured outrage. I mean, she outlines it's like a Bear Stearns study or something that.
I didn't know Bear Stearns, a financial institution, would do a study on immigration, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're definitely wrong. It's not a study on immigration. I'd have to look up the exact fact for you to see what it was. But it was using better metrics to try and determine how many illegals are here. And I think it has something to do with tracking remittances back to Mexico and things like that.
So
You can't look at self-reported census data like, are you illegal? No, absolutely not. That's insane.
Well, I've not once said, but and again, we'll have to either do an extended or an article on this. I'm positive that the 10 to 12 million person estimate is not uniquely and only based on census data. If that's the case, I apologize. And I will, if you can show me that is the case, I apologize, because going off census data is obviously absolutely ass backwards in this issue. But I have to believe that if that's the generally accepted number, it's coming from very smart people who know how to measure these things and are doing more than just looking at census data where the people that they're trying to count are obviously not going to answer the door. So if you can prove me wrong and you can find me credible sources that show that it's greatly more than that 20 to 12 million, I'd love to see them.
Aside from lending you my copy of Adios America that you probably wouldn't read anyway.
Could start a nice fire with it. Give some light to some illegals trying to get across the border. Love to help. So here's another thing. Do you support this? So you know what? Let's just put it all out in the open. I am the victim of my own circumstance and have been found guilty of a DUI that has caused some impacts in my life, including being in jail, the aforementioned jail. As well as now my driving restriction is severely limited, which means when I have to go between cities, I commonly take the Greyhound bus. Here's what I found. Now at the Tampa Greyhound station, when the bus terminal pulls in, I have 2 Customs and Border Patrol agents that board the bus and ask people if they're U.S. citizens. Please, Mr. Right Mike, in all of your small government wisdom, tell me how or why that is an effective way to patrol our borders to people who are doing nothing more than travel. Absolutely disgusting.
I don't find that disgusting. I don't necessarily think that's probably not a very efficient use of resources. So it's not something I would probably argue for. But
$70,000 a year times 2 of them, I think it came out to something like
70 times 2? It's 140.
$70,000 times 2, $140,000, 65. So yeah, that's we're paying $390 a day for them to ask a bus full of, and all they can do is ask a bus full of people if they're U.S. citizens. Is this the small government dream that you've been dreaming about?
Didn't I just say I wouldn't? Or I don't feel like that's an efficient use of resources.
So like
I'd rather
build a wall.
If we're gonna come up with a really nice solution, number one is absolutely secure the border. We have every right to secure our border. Build a wall. Build a big, beautiful wall. Create a path to citizenship for people or immigration path.
They're going to get over the wall or through the wall on visas, and then they're going to stay here. But that's fine.
I think that you're going to stem a lot of the illegal immigration with a wall. And the argument that the wall won't work, I think, is one of the silliest arguments to make against a wall.
It's not that it won't work. It's just not stopping anything.
Oh, there's hardly anyone crossing, or it's a minimal number crossing the border illegally.
Right.
I don't agree with that remotely, and you should, in principle, not argue against a border wall then, because all it's going to do is when you have...
I'm not going to spend the money on something... Why?
Because if the people that are crossing the border, when people are crossing the border and getting caught and getting locked up, that's costing us money too.
I also
What's
don't
the
want
ROI
to spend,
on that?
No. Come on, you can't bill me for the lockup tab. I'm against that.
No, we are already paying for that. We are already paying for that. Let's pay for a wall instead. Let's take some of that money and put it towards a wall.
Let's not.
Let's finance the wall with money from China.
It's like saying, well, if you don't think there's that the militarized space force will stop anything, it's still good to have. No, it's a waste of money. If it's not stopping anything that we don't need to be stopped,
no, we're not agreeing that it's not stopping anything. I think it stops a ton of illegal immigration. That one town in Texas, if you find that article, there's
that one study you found. You can go ahead, you can get it.
It's an example. It stopped illegal crossings by 89%.
Right.
And it's not like it went from 10 down to 1.
Yeah. How do you
That's
know?
what you're,
What's the
because
number?
they had data behind. I'll find it for you.
So
You'll feel better.
89% is great, but
All right, when the project first started in 2006, illegal crossings totaled 122,000. But by 2010, when the 131-mile fence was completed from one end of El Paso out into the New Mexico desert, immigrant crossings shrank to just 12,251, an 89% decrease.
You said 120. What was the before number?
122,000 in 1 year.
That's interesting because I'm looking at a new study saying that the total number of people crossing illegally is only 170,000. So, wow, they knocked out almost all illegal crossings with just this one part of the fence. That's impressive. Or your numbers are whack.
No, it's New York Post, by the way. It's not. I was incorrect. It's Wash Post.
Yes. Everyone slow down. We got a real reputable source coming in hot here. Come on.
So the town's not real because you don't believe the source. But when it's convenient, you like to quote all sorts of BS articles that aren't backed up with anything.
What BS articles have I ever quoted?
The Jordan Peterson article about enforced monogamy. How you tore me down for liking Jordan Peterson. All over a hit piece that you didn't even read.
First of all, it was the New York Times. Second of all, I don't have time to read everything I send you, Mike.
Then why are you sending it to me?
Because, I know it would hurt your snowflake feelings. I don't have a response for that.
There were 303,000 apprehensions in the southwest U.S. during fiscal year 2017, Bloomberg.com. So if it's 40 to 55% and they're apprehending 303,000, that means there's another 300,000 making it across. If it's 40 to 55%, that would be another 300,000 or 400,000 people that are making it across. So I would say that we're going to stop a lot of people with a border wall.
So there's 200,000. So we're still talking only about less than 1%.
Hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Not really.
We allow total immigration of like 1 million people a year. That's almost 40. I mean, that's 40% more. And if we didn't stop those 300,000, that'd be 70% more. That's a lot of people.
So, again, we're going to disagree on the cost of immigration, whether that's a problem to begin with.
Would you at least backpedal a little bit and say that it's not a really small number of people crossing the border? You don't think 300,000 apprehended?
I still don't believe it's 300,000.
You don't believe Bloomberg.com is saying that there were 303,916 border apprehensions in the southwest U.S. during fiscal year 2017, which is a drop from 2016, which makes sense because when you get tougher on immigration, people get a little bit worried about crossing illegally. You don't believe
Bloomberg.com says that according to the Institute for Defense Analysis, it estimates that 200,000 people made it across in 2015, down from an estimated 2 million in 2000.
So if you say it's between those between 200,000 and 400,000 people, that's a lot of people either way. Even if it's the 200,000 number that are getting through, and we're getting most of the people already, you really don't think that a border wall is going to eliminate like 90% of those crossings. And how much does that lower our enforcement costs if we don't have to apprehend 303,000 people because there aren't over 500,000 trying to cross the border every year?
So the cost of the wall is prohibitive, and then the cost to maintain the wall is equally prohibitive. It's just an absolute shit show waste of money. I don't understand. It's ineffective in the sense that it's not going to I think even with the enforcement and all of the savings and enforcement, saving and detaining, this, that, and the other thing, I think construction and maintenance costs will far exceed what we're spending now by a landslide.
You believe that it's going to cost more to maintain a wall than to apprehend 500,000 people at the border.
Yeah, I would. The border wall could cost $70 billion to build and $150 million to maintain. All right, so maintenance is negligible. I think that at best you'd be lucky to break even with this monstrosity. Also, historically, walls not really humans' favorite things.
All right, so if it costs over $10,000 to deport somebody, if we apprehend them and deport them. Right. So we're already apprehending 303,000 people.
How much does it cost?
Over 10,000 per.
To apprehend small government.
And deport somebody. Right. A wall will be cheaper. And it's going to discourage the number of people trying to cross in the first place.
A wall's only going to be cheaper if you're counting in.
If it reduces the number of people that make it across the border, which it certainly will.
The wall is only going to make fiscal sense if you're factoring in that we're detaining people for 3, 4, 5 months, because it's the cost to detain them. It's the single largest cost there. If you have the catch and release program for the majority of first-time crossers, then the wall's not going to be worth it. because the cost to apprehend and return them isn't $10,000. It's going to be
It's
far less.
still going to be expensive.
Not enough to justify a $70 billion monstrosity.
So, well, you're talking about $3 billion a year at even 300,000. That would be 3 billion with a B.
Right.
And that's at 300,000. Apprehensions a few years ago were 1.6 million. So that we'd be talking 16 billion. I don't think the argument that you're grabbing at straws trying to argue that it's going to cost, $150 million is not going to be cheaper than all the apprehensions at the border.
Yeah, but you got to factor in the original cash outlay is $70 billion. So at $3 billion, which is a high side estimate,
$3 billion is a really low side estimate. We're already apprehending 303,000 people, and they're let's say between 200,000 and 400,000 are making it across. That is 700,000, or on the low side, 500,000 people.
We're not processing them. So, I don't know why you're in their cost. Regardless, you're looking at upwards of 25 or 35 years before we're even remotely close to a break-even point. It's just bad finances, and we could spend the money other places.
Assuming there's no reduction
and I think you could do it better by policy. I don't think you have to spend $70 billion to stop the flow. If you have a fair asylum program, if you have a fair immigration program.
Yeah, there would be way less people trying to cross the border then.
If you implemented that with a 5-year ban, yeah, there would. If you said,
if I implemented that with a 5-year ban, but you're against that, you wouldn't agree on that policy.
No, I'll agree to the 5-year ban if we give a pathway to citizenship to those that should come here and the good people that want to come here. Then fine, I'd rather use policy like a 5-year ban in place of a dumb wall. I think that's a fine trade-off that I'm willing to make.
I still want the wall. I want the wall, and I want stricter policy. But I would, right. I think it would be a really great solution to institute some sort of citizenship ban. First time, 5 years. Second time, lifetime. You're never coming here.
What about?
I also want to get rid of. Is it? It's jus sanguinis and jus soli. That's law of the land and law of the blood. Sanguinis being blood. So if your parents are U.S. citizens, you're a U.S. citizen. I do not believe in jus soli. I think is the other one, which is law of the land. At all. I don't think you should be able to cross illegally and push out a baby on American soil, and that's an American citizen.
Why?
Well, that's a pretty darn good incentive for somebody to risk their life and illegally cross a border, so that way they can birth an American citizen. And then you're tearing families apart if you want to deport their parents. I think it's just bad all around.
So where do you stand? And where do you stand on dreamers then? People that came here as children.
Dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't believe in calling them dreamers.
Do you know why they're called dreamers? Do you know why? The people covered under that act. They're not having a dream. They are people covered by the dream. So you think it's total?
You think dream is just a total coincidence, and that's just like.
No, I don't necessarily think it's coincidence, but that wouldn't be
on Obama. It's not rooted in the idea that they're these young dreamers. Like that's Obama's rhetoric.
Then that would be on Bush.
If the policy was created, I'm not arguing against
Bush.
If Obama's saying it, that's what he.
Regardless.
How many times has Obama talked about the dreamers? I never heard Bush talking about dreamers. I don't care who created the legislation. I'm not trying to have an Obama versus Bush conversation.
Do we give them citizenship or we ship them back?
Your parents brought you here illegally. We're not going to reward them for that.
So someone that has lived their entire life, they know no other country, they were born here.
You said, do you give them citizenship?
Right. And they've gone to college here. They're productive members of society, and they can get out. But, Billy Bob on welfare in a trailer park in central Alabama who has sex with relatives is an American citizen, and therefore he's good to go. Patently ridiculous, right? Patently ridiculous that once you've demonstrated that you're a valuable contributing member of society, how do you not give those people a pathway to citizenship? I think
that's a slippery slope that you're talking about. So you're saying that if I can prove someone's not a valuable contributing member of the society, I get to eject them from society?
No, I don't think it works that way. Why would we not want some of the brightest minds and best people young people in this country right now to remain in this country? Why would we want to uproot them and send them out? That is brutal, and shame on you.
Oh, well, okay. Well, first off, I'll give you two responses to that. The first one being an immigration policy where we start talking about the best and brightest, which is the one that would be very pro-U.S. immigration policy. We already have the H-1B visa program.
They were brought here as children. They didn't have that luxury. They don't have that opportunity.
I said on that side of things, if we're talking about the best and brightest, that's fine. But if you want to create, if you want to argue that the dreamers deserve a path to citizenship because they're the best and the brightest, then I'll say let's do that. Then let's hammer down some criteria of what makes you the best and brightest, and any one of those dreamers that meets that criteria, I will grant citizenship to if I had my magic citizenship wand. As long as you agree that the rest get kicked out. How do you like that?
I'd have to think about it.
Better for the U.S. because I am for. I'm for that. You know what? If you've got some people that are clearly making the country a better place, and we're gonna develop these criteria that make someone the best and the brightest, they are definitely much better than our native population.
I think I would agree. I think I would agree on that. Where I would disagree is where we draw the line. Right? As long as you're kind of on the right side of the line, the right side of average, contributing member of society, all the power to you. Go to it, right? Basically, as long as you're not living and not surviving, which I think very few of them are, then you should stay and be permitted to grow and thrive. I think you would draw the line.
The parents are illegals that get kicked out, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so you let the parents stay on only the dreamers that you're granting citizenship to?
I don't think you should.
Because I draw the line there.
I don't think you should separate any family. I don't think you should necessarily give them rights as citizens, but I think you should give them work permits so they can pay taxes. Right? If they're going to be here, may as well get them.
That's a very different. You could institute a policy where you change the way that we look at this whole idea of a nation with borders, which I don't think is a poor way of thinking of it. Where if you want to have a more humane or compassionate policy where you recognize that these are families still, as much as they broke the law, the parents broke the law, I'm for kicking them out. But if I'm trying to come to a compromise, it is going to be something like, so you can't qualify for any benefits of any kind. You have to have proof of health insurance, so you can't be leeching off our system, and you can't just say, let's just go to universal health care. Don't do that.
I don't disagree with the healthcare part. Well, healthcare is cost prohibitive.
Well, I'm saying, so you'll look at just like in sales, where let's look at objections to what's wrong with this. And I think that's one of the differences is that a lot of folks on the left believe that the objection is, they're brown, they're too brown. I don't know anybody that cares. I literally know nobody that cares about skin color that's white. So I'm not arguing that there's no racism, but I'm arguing that the idea that the immigration policy or wanting to enforce our borders is somehow racist, I think that's insane because, for example, no one's complaining about the H-1B visa holders coming from India. They're coming here with skills that we need. We have a bunch of kids majoring in women's studies and social justice and psychology instead of majoring in computer science or fields that we need. There's no connection to an education and the value of an education. There's zero connection. Your answer is more free education. That makes sense. With different conversation, I get it. But having people that are definitely, no one's arguing that Indians from India, of course, are not like really valuable members of American society. They are typically, they're higher incomes, higher IQs. They're better than the native population on those metrics. So there's no argument for saying, we don't want them. The only argument would be that if you do just take the best and brightest from other countries, that what you're doing is you're really hurting that country in the long run. So if we're taking all the best and brightest people from a country, there is an argument that you have then hurt that country.
Done disservice to that country. Yeah, no, and I understand that. And listen, I understand that you don't think that like you're being outwardly racist, but like these policies and the way they're inflicted.
What race is Mexican?
Mexicano, I believe is how you say it. Bigoted, better. I know.
What race is that though? You can't call it racist if you want to secure our border.
All right, you're right. It's not racist.
It's not racist.
It's bigoted. It's bigotry, right? It's thinly veiled bigotry and xenophobia. What do you say about the all the crops that are rotting in fields now because we don't have immigrants to pick them, right? That's a problem that's growing for farmers. Actually, I saw.
When's the last time you went to the grocery store and couldn't buy food?
Alex Jones actually posted something that farmers are killing themselves at a much higher rate, and using Alex Jones logic, I'm going to tie that directly to the rotting crops and fields.
I'm confused what the problem is. When's the last time you went to the grocery store and you're like, oh my God, there's no tomatoes. We must have built a border wall.
It's not my problem. I'm saying that the whole idea is, these immigrants are taking our jobs. They're not taking our jobs. They're not taking the jobs that Americans want. Right.
Who does illegal immigration hurt the most in the U.S.?
Class.
It hurts the middle class the most, or does it hurt the lower class the most?
It hurts the lowest
Right.
incomes of them.
Which
right?
disproportionately affects the black community.
Right. And that's fine, and I can accept
And that's
that.
one of the reasons we have black Americans that are here that want and need jobs, and we have an economy that's failing them. We have a school system that's failing them.
So you
I think
punish
illegal immigration exacerbates that problem.
Yeah, but you punish the employers. You don't suck those to try to suck the illegal.
But you got to also remove the incentives to come here.
We're never going to agree on this. We're never going to agree on all of this.
So can we compromise and say instead of a 20-foot wall, can we make it 19 feet?
You can
just do that.
Make it
Does
3 feet.
Does that cut 5% off the
Make
price?
it 3 feet. And
Is
go
that going to
fuck
save us
yourself
$3.5 billion? Do we pay for? I think we got to pay per foot.
You know what, Mike? Make the wall just tall enough that the survivability from jumping off the top of it is less than 50%. Build it, and then take a long walk off it. How about that? How about that for tolerance?
Why does it always have to resort to like attacks? I don't attack
Because
you. That's
I know,
the hallmark of
because-
the left.
Is it?
Yeah. I don't agree with you, so I shall attack you.
Mhm.
Character attacks.
Well, I think if maybe if I attack your character enough time, maybe you'll develop something that even resembles morality. But that's yet to be seen.
Or I'll just become more entrenched in my position. I don't see how you're going to argue that it's more moral to allow people to freely enter our country and say like, well, let's just go more lax. Well, if you remove the disincentives and you say that you get a free pass the first time, basically, then that's exactly what you're doing. And you're hurting, again, you've agreed, you're hurting the lowest income Americans, which disproportionately affects the black community. These are Americans that are already here.
I also feel for the black community, and I'm.
Then why would you want to promote an immigration policy that hurts them?
I'm not going to try to help one person by hurting another when we have enough resources to help everyone to an adequate level. We're the richest nation in the world, and we should start acting like it.
So how many people? So if we take 1 million a year, how many do you think we should take? What's the right number then? If we're too strict right now.
I don't have the numbers. I don't have all the solutions for this. I just know that the U.S. acts in a manner that is just reprehensible. I'm not for open borders. I'm for reasonable measures to slow immigration, but I think you do it through policy, not enforcement.
Did you ever watch that Gumball immigration video?
Yes, I did.
I really, really, really like that video because it does quantify things as far as immigration and birth rates in these countries. So the Gumball immigration video, which I'm going to link below, but if you look up Gumball immigration, you'll find it. It's explaining that we're taking a lot of immigrants, let's say from Mexico. The plurality of our immigrants come from Mexico. So there's however many countries out there, but it ended up being over 5 billion people that live in countries that are poorer than Mexico. So if the argument is that we're a rich country, so we should allow people to come here, well, then those 5 billion people living in poorer countries than Mexico would logically then have just as much, if not more of a claim to be able to come to the United States. And in those countries, if we're taking, let's say, 1 million a year, which has been roughly our immigration policy, we can't take in 100 million a year, but there's 80 million people being born into those countries, over 80 million people a year. So there's literally no way for us to solve the world's problems by allowing more immigration. It's just the math isn't there. What we need to do is enable. Maybe we can do things to enable these countries to have a freer market, to have a democracy similar to ours, and enjoy a little bit of capitalism and some of the benefits that capitalism.
We're going to bring our democracy to you.
No, I don't. We're not trying to invade Mexico to give them our political system.
No, I agree with you. I think that would be a better way to go, and that would be great if we were doing it right. The U.S. spends among developed nations. We spend among the lowest percentage of our GDP on foreign aid.
Oh darn!
So, yeah, I know, real sad. I know you're heartbroken. So, yeah, if you have that stance, if you want to help people in other countries, I think that's a much better idea than allowing freer borders. But take action, do it. Support politicians.
Voluntary support for sure. I don't believe in stealing other people's money.
Oh, right. Yeah, taxes theft. I
think that there's nothing virtuous about spending someone else's money. I can't say I'm going to take all this money from all these rich people in the U.S.
There's nothing virtuous about living in a society that you didn't pay for without contributing to that, right? It's the same thing both ways.
There's plenty of people that seem to feel that they have plenty of virtue. Basically, every SJW college kid doesn't contribute anything, and they feel quite virtuous.
That's a dumb example, but all right, guys. So if you're watching this, this is the end of the official episode. If you're listening on the podcast, we'll have the extended and uncensored version on the website if you want to check that out. But aside from that,
that's for our Patreon subscribers only. Both of our Patreon subscribers really love the extended content.
Both of us
and uncensored.
leftmic rightmic.com/support. We'll see you next time.